Hello and welcome to the Carousel
Oh,
Podcast. I have with me today Gio Pennacchietti and aka Giant Gio. You will know who he is, probably, maybe. I always say
oh,
that. He is a Canadian ontologist, taxonomist, and zoologist, you might even say, of our space. He's the creator
certainly am
of
an animal myself, but
yeah. Yeah, well, that's literally exactly what we're going to talk about today is which animal are you? You know, so
yeah.
creator of Substack and Geo's Content Minded Corner. It's also a YouTube and a podcast and an everything, and an artist, a visual artist, painter, and an etch artist. And you can look at his work on Instagram and other places. So I think the kind of theme I want to go with here, I'll be honest, Gio, this was the hardest one that I've had to prepare for so far. And I'll tell you why I think that is. And let me know if you think this is true. You are like, people call you like the king of lore. And I think you're like a walking encyclopedia, kind of like for our thing. You have a piece called Confederacy of Shitposters, which sort of is the beginning of like a taxonomy
Yeah.
of our entire space. But when you are the classifier, it is very hard to be classified. So it's like I've had a hard time like wrapping my head around like the Geo brand, like what actually is Geo, And so I think
Awesome
that
Chungus art, man. There you
right,
go.
right, because you have so many things going on, and you have so many kind of like projects, and your writing is like so many references, and we'll get into that, but I guess first of all, I want to ask, what does Pennacchietti mean?
That's my real name.
I know, but
You didn't
like,
know that?
what does it mean? Do you know what it translates?
Pennacchietti means in Italian it means little bird in
Uh,
proper Italian. But my mother's maiden name means master of the world. So it's sort of like little bird and master. It's a contradiction, but yeah, it essentially means little wing or little bird in Italian. Um, yeah, my if you look up my name, like my old man's relatives go way back in Canada because my old man's cousins they ran one of the biggest precast and block manufacturing plant in like all of North America almost, but it got bodied in the 80s, so it's like impossible to find records on the internet because it like you remember like the whole huge wave in the deindustrialization in the 80s before Reagan and Brian Mulroney came to power, right? So they got destroyed there for bad mismanagement, whatever. But no, my old man comes from the quote unquote farmers side of the family, and I come from a working class. Well, I mean, middle, but like working class construction background. I guess small business is sort of like that weird in between, right? So I grew up like I did not grow up like a usual academic, like upper middle class pedigree. Like maybe, in terms of uh small businesses are very weird that way, in that you're sort of like I like to call them the dark hobbits. Okay, this is what Moldbug does not realize. Dark hobbits
There's dark
are like
hobbits.
small,
There's dark hobbits.
yeah, yeah, the small business people that are like, you know, I mean, we like to keep. I mean, I live in the same house my great grandfather lived in, right? So, no, but like, yeah, the dark hobbit is like the sort of people that voted for Trump that were of like a higher income, like not higher income bracket, but like people that are more of the technical and blue collar field, but are not like white collar professionals,
Yes, you're talking
basically.
about the
So
kulaks. You're talking about kulaks, basically,
the
right?
kulaks, yeah,
Yeah, you're
essentially,
talking
yeah,
about the
yeah.
kulaks.
Molbug does not, yeah, he doesn't factor into the
Yeah, he
equation
doesn't talk
the
about the kulaks.
kulak.
Yeah, he also
Uh,
misses. So he misses the dark elves and the dark hobbits, but he also misses the light hobbits. He's
yeah,
totally missing the average normie man. You know what I mean? Who's
yeah,
just like a normal
yeah,
guy who is super woke because his brain is filled with utilitarian worms. Like rationalist. Just normal guys. He's
yeah,
missing that whole thing.
yeah,
Like, where's the normal guys in this? Like, that's like the biggest swath of the population, and he's
yep.
categorizing them with hobbits who want to grow, but that's not really accurate. Like, those guys are not exactly the same. So, yeah, there's a few other people we should put into Moldbug's paradigm there that we haven't. Okay.
Yeah, it's like Justin Murphy, like we were talking about this years ago, how when he first broke in, okay, yeah, you're gonna mention it, but
It's perfect
he
you're
said
bringing
to
this up
me,
because this is what I want to start with. So good.
yeah, you go ahead. Sorry, it's your show. You go ahead, my friend. So
Okay, so what I wanted to ask you about Justin Murphy, and then you can make your point, but let's just intro
no,
Justin Murphy. So Justin Murphy, for people who don't know, although probably most do who are listening to this, Justin Murphy is a face fag like me, meaning he shows
yeah,
his face. And he began as a professor, I believe, at a um, English university somewhere in
yeah,
London, at like Leeds or
yeah,
something. And he was he was kind of an open-minded guy. He, shit posting like everybody else and saying, inappropriate things on the internet. And about and so today we know him as a guy who has been basically canceled and
mm,
now, runs his own show. He left the university. I think he got like banished, whatever it was. But in
yep,
researching for this show, I found you on Justin Murphy's podcast from 4 years ago.
yeah.
And in the intro, he, first of all, 4 years ago, he's like so positive. He looks so like young and happy and like he's like really like all excited. Whereas today he's just kind of like crass, like he's kind of like angry, And
Yeah.
then he's like
You're
so
really rage maxed, yeah.
yeah, he's like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And he has this intro right before he starts talking to you where he goes, "Oh yeah, the university has started investigating me." And but I really think it's not a problem. Like they're not gonna win. Like the power balance is in my favor. Like it's gonna be a PR disaster for the university if they go after me. But if I'm not mistaken, he got crushed by them, right?
Yeah, yeah, he got totally, yeah, BTFO'd. And the Daily Mail article really sealed it. So I was one of his first guests, by the way. So I'll always like listen. A lot of people have a lot of negative things to say about Justin Murphy, that he's a grifter, and and okay, yeah, he's open about the fact that he's a grifter, as we all.
Well, I don't think he's a
But
grifter, but yeah.
I think he has a way of bringing people to a conversation that is more of like the program that's more easy to monetize. But Justin, he did me a solid early on, and I'll always stand him. He'll always be a good friend. And yeah, so at the time, I was just out of grad school as well, and he he was getting canceled because of the one necrophilia tweet. And so he's American, by the way. He grew up in
Wait,
America.
so this is what I want to do, Gio. Every time we need like,
Yeah.
do you remember when Dennis Miller was on Monday Night Football and for
Uh,
like 5 seconds and every time he made a reference, we needed like a little explanation. So like when you're saying the necrophilia tweet, what was the necrophilia? I know
I
it,
think
but
he
what was it?
compared, I believe he compared a certain controversial medical procedure for YouTube for abortion to necrophilia. And it was a keynote tweet, by the way. It was
It
actually
was good.
pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. But he was like, he was like exposed in the Daily Mail. And the picture they used of him with his like scraggly beard was not very flattering. He's much more masculine now. I think he maybe have taken some advice from the bodybuilders he's interacted with. But at the time, he was like skinny fat, like bearded, like soy glasses academic,
Yeah.
and the picture just looked terrible. And he was he was from America, but he took a tenureship in England because it's
Right.
much easier there to get a tenure track. Um, and yeah, and so the reason I bring him up is because we have a similar like experience in the sense of like being like coming from like a working class background and then going into academia and experience, like I didn't experience much of it, but I guess I did maybe behind my back. The sort of classism like he was talking about with me, like there is a sort of there is a certain I'm slurring my words, a certain like disposition and a deferential character that you have to have in academia to go far, pretty much. And so the censorship, and me and him were talking about this at the time. This is when Jordan Peterson was blowing up, right? That it's not that they censor you like you're a controversial person and they like take away It's more of they have sort of like a physiognomy and a mental and even I would say physical physiognomy that they sort of select from. I had friends when I was going into my master's. I have a dual master's. I had friends that went on late, not to say the universities, but I mean, in Canada, pretty much it's like University of Toronto if you're in politics. But I had friends who went on to PhD programs and they had that character, basically. And so it's not like the things that I found very interesting in academia are the things that I could basically do on my own, which is tutoring, the TA-ship of it, the lecturing, the actual intellectual work. And even Justin Murphy was saying, like, that's a very small percent of stuff that you're doing in a university environment. You're basically working a corporate job, more or less. And like you were saying, like you have a background in the art world and journalism and so forth. Like it's the same stuff. It's like you're not really doing the sort of work of promoting ideas or in that case the work of art or that's why I didn't go to art school, because basically I have having a master's in philosophy and in poli-sci, it's like there's really no point in that. They give you these little theory courses and I mean, if you wanted for the technical skill, if you wanted to go to Atelier, I mean, I have criticism of them as well, because it's basically all just taking the work of art and making it into an artisan craft. Like, so that's my criticism of Ateliers. But when it comes to art school, like, well, first of all, I mean, I wouldn't want to like, I wouldn't want to deal with the people that go to art school. Obviously, that's number one. But also, the institutions across the board, they basically have taken either fine arts or the humanities and broken them down into technical craft fields that are not conducive to a lot of cross-disciplinary thinking. But anyways, but Justin Murphy got canceled because he was basically a frog in hiding.
Yeah, he was a frog in hiding. And no, I'm interested in everything you just said about academia and learning to do what we do versus actually doing it, and the connections there. So what do you think from our perspective? So my theory about what you're saying, well, actually, let's just finish with Justin Murphy first. So Justin Murphy.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the introduction. You're going to introduce me, but I know I'm terrible for that as well. My podcast, sometimes it takes me an hour to get to the introduction.
Well, no, I did introduce you. I introduced you.
Oh, I thought you meant like you were gonna go through the roots and the like how I got started, blah blah blah.
No, we don't have to. We'll get into that. But where do you see? So here's how I see Justin. Justin, I don't think he is a grifter. That's not that. No. I don't get the grift vibe from him. I get what I really respect about him is he is somebody that is doing this for a living, and that is hard. And I have nothing but respect. Yeah. I know some people don't like that, and it messes with the purity, but I think it's great that he has figured out how to do this professionally. I don't have any issue with Justin, but I do find his tweeting to be extremely cringe. And I think a lot of
a bit.
Yeah, right. I can't tell if that's serious. And it also is like this guy, it was so crazy to see him right on the precipice of this cancellation, because he's so like, he literally looks like a different person. And then now today, so much more like angry, like everything he says is kind of tinged with this like fury, which I get. Yeah. Like I have the same fury. I get it. But it's like, it's funny to see people pre and post cancellation, and how like some people like that who really thought they were going to get to play by the rules and really genuine, you can hear him say it. He's like, oh no, they're not going to come after me. And then they get crushed. People like that, it hurts them deeply. I know a few other people who then afterwards are just filled with such rage forever. Then there's other people like my last guest, who are 2 guests ago by the time this comes out, who is Bennett's Phylactery. Kevin Dolan.
Bennett Emlich, good friend,
He's great. And he was like set free by it. Like he was way better off after getting canceled. Like you can just tell, like he was like, man, I had this horrible consulting job at like a big thing. Like he's like, breath of fresh air. Like I'm better off. So it's funny how different people like react to getting canceled. And I feel like for Justin, like it was probably good for his career because he's figuring it out. But like in terms of his output, it seems like it's gotten very like kind of cringe negative a little bit. I don't know. So, but I have nothing but respect for the guy. I really do like him, and I think I have issue with some of the things he says from a cringe standpoint, but I think he's pretty much like a good guy, and I don't find him to be a grifter. But where do you see him in our landscape?
Well, I think he would admit he's more of a he's more of like an amalgamator
An
of different things.
amalgamator.
I mean, like he brings people together. I feel like he's got sort of like the platform vibe. But he has his own content. Like he came out with Base to Lose and so forth. But I think Justin, he's good at the art of provocation that academia did not afford him the opportunity to get. And so I feel like a lot of his tweeting, like, okay, you got to realize,
totally.
When you talk to someone, and first of all, I totally forget the interview. I remember I was talking about like the internet metaphysics or something because it's like 4 years ago, and so the past 2 years before 2022 was sort of a daze because of my prior arrangement with speaking of following the rules. But no, Justin, he's got a formula. He knows exactly, like he's so well aware of like the different communities that he intersects with, whether it be the frogs, the rationalists, the academics, just even like normie stan Twitter people, that he like crafts the perfect provocations on the TL to then rake in engagement and then rake in discourse from it. He's like a machine of that. Like the abortion tweet was that, the necrophilia abortion tweet. The recent one with, now he's a father. The recent one, he knew that he was going to piss off a huge swath of like the rationalists intersecting with the homesteader, like lumber soy type of like that type of discourse, right? So he knew he was going to piss off all those people.
So because he tweeted again, wait, let's just tell everybody. He tweeted, I remember this also. It's ridiculous.
How hard it is to be a father. You're not going to party in the weekend.
It's funny how I like know all this. I don't even know that I know so much about Justin Murphy, but I do. Yeah, he tweeted this whole thing about like being a father is taking care of a baby is really, really difficult, and it's made him really depressed, which is like, you're right. It's the perfect balance of things that's going to annoy everybody. Everybody involved is going to be annoyed by that tweet, and they're going to find some reason to come out and say, "No, Justin, you're wrong. You're bad." Did you ever read Bobo's?
This guy's a loser.
Yeah, you're a loser. You're a cuck. Did you ever read Bobo's in Paradise by David Brooks?
I don't think I have.
It's not. David Brooks sucks, and anybody hearing me like shilling David Brooks is going to hate me. But I will say that this one book is great. Bobo's in Paradise is really, really good, and it's a lot about academia and like coming up in academia. And his advice. His advice for young academics is to come up with a article or like an essay that is titled "The Death of Blank," like the death of something. Just come up with something and make it 100% wrong. Like make it obviously wrong. Like just say everything you're saying, make it like brazenly, obviously wrong. And you will be the next academic star, because everybody will then go and write a paper in response to your obviously wrong paper about the death of blank. And I think that's what you're saying. Justin is basically doing that. Like he's out there saying things he knows are going to provoke responses.
Yeah, he's good at because of his background in like cybernetics and different like theory cell type of stuff around accelerationism. He knows like the platform he's on and what it takes to get engagement and how that sort of spreads like a virus or a mimetic antigen rather to provoke a response within the body of a certain online community discourse. And he's the master at that. So
he really is.
I'm too like, I don't know, high agreeableness to like try to do that every time. Even the series we're going to talk about was provoked by me trying to do that. But I just don't have the gall for that type of. Some people can harden their their character towards it. But I try to like stay on the level. But then sometimes you have to like allow yourself the room to provoke and piss people off, and sort of say your own unique truth, even though it can get you. There was something that an editor of mine many years ago said this to me, and I won't use his name because he's frankly been canceled by the scene. Um, he said that, a lot of times we talk about in these circles about censorship and how we can't climb normal institutions, especially academia, because a lot of us, like in the E-right, are basically failed academics.
Yeah.
And so it's like, because let's face it, we're all sensitive young men, right? So we all grew up. I grew up as a sensitive young man, and so it's like you are pissed off at the fact that you're not going to be accepted by the mainstream, but yet you create a sort of chamber of discourse that is in some ways just as much censorious, or has a sort of number of images of thought in the scene that you can't cross over. And if you do, if you trip that wire, then it will basically pit brother against brother. And many people have done this, of course. I mean, the scene in 2016, quote unquote, the sector, was much different than now. Nowadays, it's sort of like there's a lot of like competing, warring factions, and a lot of people, basically to achieve clout and for other reasons, will transgress those sort of boundaries to state their case and then create something from that. I've seen this happen with my own eyes, being an old hat myself, so yeah.
So
but
where do
Justin's
you
very good at
fall?
cross-cutting.
Where do you fall?
Well, what'd you say?
Where do you fall? Where are you
I
in this map of the thing, of the map of the Twitter scene? Where is Gio?
see, it depends on the year, I guess, but I mean, I guess broadly, like, okay, I came in on the original wave of Frog Twitter around 2014-15, and like sort of the NRX bloggers, even though I was not directly in the sort of like HPD rationalist side of NRX, I was much more of like the theory cell side of like those bloggers. And so back in 2015, there was an attempt to centralize all of these bloggers with publications like Thermometer Magazine and Social Matter, and now American Sun. And I was sort of those, like that explicitly like Twitter crowd that came in at that day. But when it comes to like the factions within it, I'm pretty much like my own island, because like I guess in the past I would identify with trad, but even nowadays it's sort of like a passe thing that doesn't really describe. Even back then I would get into arguments with people because I would entertain certain like new left theorists that I worked in grad school, and it's sort of like very hard to classify. Like again, I'm constantly aware of the fact that like I'm it's like a very fart huffing type of like I'm above it all, but I'm generally not above it all.
I'm not. I don't think that, Gio.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to understand you genuinely. I like. Do you go to church?
Yeah, I'm not as much as I want to, but it's I try. But I guess I mean Twitter Catholic.
Are you a frog?
I mean,
Do you consider yourself a frog?
basically. I mean, that's my main, my main thing, I guess, the beat, in other words.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it depends what frog though, right? Because I don't share the markers of a lot of different groups within the frogs. Like I'm not a Bappy and Vital as much as I intellectually explore the space of like a lot of that sector, right? I'm friends with most of them. Yeah, I don't have the qualifications, nor do I have the body. Working on it though, working on it. Nor do I have the body to become a Bappy and Vitalist. Nor like even being a trad cath, I wouldn't consider myself. I mean, do I believe in trad Catholicism? Yeah, I believe in the traditionalist interpretation of scripture and doctrine, but I wouldn't like when it comes to like the clique though, I've always had like a sort of more meta relationship to it than like being an explicitly like the Vatican flag of my bio is because that is of my faith, right? That is but when it comes to like, especially nowadays, there are a lot of like ideas that I entertain intellectually that wouldn't like fall into the like trad sector, even though I more align with that way of thinking. I feel like the trads had an immense opportunity after 2016 that they sort of squandered in a lot of ways. So I'm willing to entertain more of the like various quatrains of the E-right, but I myself like to consider myself on an island in a way, right? Because um not that even like, see, my series is more about like the meta, like the structure of what constitutes the E-right rather than a book like, for example, when Angela Nagle wrote Kill All Normies, which
Yeah.
was more of like the nitty-gritty, like here are the players, here's
Mhm.
the gossip, here's what this person's doing. Like I venture into that on my podcast a lot, right? But it's more of like I'm interested in what constitutes a dissident avant-garde, if you will. And even like people that would slot me into like, okay, what is the art right, which is like the term that Moba came up with. It's like that's even, as an artist myself, is like one of the few people that doesn't just talk about uh making alternatives to the work, the current art world, but someone who definitely is an artist. I mean, like I've sort of like soured on the whole like, not soured, but I've sort of my critiques of like the dime square, like publishing industry type of stuff. Because I feel like we're just in a discursive loop rather than actually encouraging people. Like the few people that do, like my friend Mark Granza, and I'm 1776, or like Lomez with the Passage Prize, which I was a judge on. That was pretty controversial. I believe that I like to be on my own, because when you affiliate too much with one particular part of the sector, it sort of pigeonholes you, and it sort of breaks off your own ability to really go through that genealogy of ideas and of sectors and personalities and ecologies, really. But having said that, I realize that only the few people can do that, because the vast majority of people need a manor bund and need a group, even if it's just online, and they need a sort of belonging. Now, I do need this belonging as well, but then it's just because of strategic decisions that I've made along the way. It's sort of like I've become an island because of the work that I do, and because, maybe because of my, INFP personality type. It's like I'm too much of like that mediator, that I can't really like align myself to
Any one thing.
too yeah, like
Well,
too vivaciously into one different thing.
what's so strange about what we're talking about is like so if you look at somebody like the Beats, right? The Beats were this interesting group because they were both the chroniclers of their scene and
Yeah,
the livers of their scene at the same time,
exactly.
right? Like they kind of
Yeah,
had to be.
yeah.
Whereas you look at something like punk rock, they didn't need to do that. Like the punk rock musicians just
No.
played the music, and then people came and recorded it.
Yeah,
And
the
they built
critics and the
around it.
writers and the theory cells, they came later.
They
Yeah.
came later
Yeah.
on, and it's like I think that, and I face this too. It's like everybody, I go to these events, I go to these conferences. I might go to the Milady rave tomorrow night.
Oh, wow.
I really don't want to go. I don't want to go at all, but I might go because I got invited, and I need something here. I need something to write about, right? I go to DeVere Ball, I go to these urban things, and everybody's always like, "Are you going to write about it?" Because it's like these dime square motherfuckers write auto fiction all day about each other, and it's like part of the
Yeah.
thing that they're all writing about each other. And
Even
like
the
doing,
critics like Crumpler do this. They write the auto fiction of the criticism
of the
of
criticism
it.
of the thing, exactly. And I've
Yeah.
heard that Times Square itself, which is run by, it's written by that guy, whose name I can't remember right now, but the playwright who's sort of the center of that scene, like him going to all the plays is kind of part of the play, and he's got some drama with like the main girl in it, who's his girlfriend, and like that's like, it's sort of this like self-referential performance, right?
It's very postmodern sort of
Exactly.
situational performance. Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
I hate that shit. I fucking hate autofiction. I don't want this masturbatory garbage. You know, like I don't want to be that. Like I don't want to go to the Urbit party and then write about the Urbit party and like all the people I saw. Like that's the fucking last thing I want to do. So it's this tension though, because there is the desire to do that, and in a way we have to do it because nobody else is going to do it for us. So I think that's kind of like what you're saying a little bit is like it's
the natives write about themselves now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the natives write about themselves, and it's like it's hard to write about yourself, but also it's like hard to join and then also be objective, and it's just this kind of weird thing.
It's very much like I think because of the literary influences on people that like are in these scenes, like it's very much like new journalism, like Tom Wolfe in the 70s and I can never it's sort of like that sort like the new journalism is very much of this like I guess Hunter S. Thompson would be like you are inserting yourself, you are the sort of the sociological gaze turns inwards when you're a part of something. I feel like that's why I've been like had a better experience than other people. And like listen, I'm not casting shade by the way, because I have a lot of friends that write for them, but places like Compact Mag and Unheard, they don't get that deference by the frogs because they're outsiders writing about the frogs. And so it's like when you're in it, like this is why I'll never counter single anonymity despite not being anonymous, is because like I realize the value in it, but also most of the people that I've made friends with, that I interact with, that I have, make business with are anonymous. And so it's like, it wouldn't be like, and plus like just by sheer fact of like most people that buy my artwork are anonymous and I have their doxes, and it's like to counter single anonymity live would not be conducive to my art sales as well. So, or my books, future book sales, by the way. So it's like I wouldn't like go out of my way like Jordan Peterson to be like listen, there are problems with anonymity, of course, but I feel like writing about those problems but then realizing the need for it is different than saying like, oh my god, these anonymous troll demons. Like it's but even like the Dime Square stuff, like it's very like on that meta critique level of like, we need dissident art. Oh, but are you going to do it? No, we got to talk about the need for dissident. It's like
right. Well, and that's why we're at such a incredibly interesting time in culture, because we have this overrun where the I call it deep fried, right? So like there was a time in culture
like the memes.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a time in culture like where I think like I want to say around 2016, probably. It was right at the time where Normcore came out. Do you remember Normcore and, Sean?
Oh, yeah.
Founding Normcore.
I think I remember this, yes.
So Sean, he, like, I actually know him well, and of course, Monahan, my bad. He's like a friend. But so Sean Monahan was part of this really amazing marketing strategy group called K-Hole, and K-Hole was like the shit.
Oh, K-Hole, yes.
This is like 2014, 2015. Everybody loved them, and they came up with Normcore, and Normcore was this like little baby movement that happened for a little while. I wrote about it for LA Weekly. That was, dressing in dad clothes. You still see it a little bit, but it had like a moment around that. And Gap made this whole advertising campaign around dress normal based on Normcore, which was like dope. And it was really good. And it was like, it scared people a little bit though, because dress normal is a little bit like fascism kind of. It's like, yo, don't be a weirdo, like be fucking normal, and that was, I think, that was the moment where that was where culture wanted to go, right? It wanted to go back right. The pendulum was like desiring to go back right. Like, and if we naturally, it would have done that. Like it's done several times before, in the 80s with punk was kind of a right-wing thing. The whole Reagan thing, that was
started off as that,
Right, yeah. So it wanted to swing back right. That was like the way it wanted to go. But and like dress normal, it was starting to happen. Normcore You know, you had a lot of black rappers, like, you know, Kanye even dressing in like a prep. And but then the powers that be are so powerful now. These institutional, like, you know, the beating heart of liberalism, the beating heart of the, you know, the Chihulu that just goes left, was like, no, 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 we can't go right. We're not going to let this thing go right. The only way we have to go is further left. We have to go further into degeneracy, further into remix culture, further into everything. So they forced society to like go to the SoundCloud rapper people, right? Who have like, it wasn't just enough to have tattoos. Now you had to have face tattoos. You couldn't just have dreads. Now you had to have like rainbow dreads, and you know,
you had to dress in a dress to the award show. Yeah,
exactly. You need to dress in a dress. So they just went totally, fully degenerate, like into the garbage heap, right? Which I call deep fried, because it's like, it's not just a postmodern remix. It's literally that remix copied 1,000 times over itself over and over, which is what a deep fried meme actually is, you know? So that's like my theory of kind of what happened. And they like, especially after Trump, they put a pin in it and they were like, nope, we're not going right. We are not going to go right. And now like the desire to go right is just so strong that all the cool kids like, no, I know I need to go here. I know I need to go here. And you have Asher Penn.
I don't believe in it, but
yeah, I don't believe in it. Right. I don't believe in it. But like, you know, all these fucking Times Square Jewish rich girls pretending to be Catholic, you know, it's like, they know that's the only place they can go. You know, you look at Asher Penn's sex magazine, it's like delicious tacos with his shirt off. And like girls wearing, girls wearing like
God,
say like, God, I love God, you know, or like, you know, some shit out that praying shit.
So I was reading Yukio Mishima.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was reading. There's a heuristic to learn, and it's just like.
So I think Heidegger said that we need yelling.
It's like these girls doing that, and so I think that we're at just such a crazy ass time in culture right now, because we're like, the establishment is pulling so hard, and these people who are naturally liberal, they don't actually believe this shit. You know, they don't really believe in Baptism at all. In fact, it offends them deeply, you know?
Yeah.
So we're at this like weird fucking cultural point, and that's why it's perfect to have you on, because you understand the shit better than anybody.
I think Bap gets a lot of heat because of like the fact that he crosses sections with a lot of like intellectually interesting stuff, but also like the lifestyle aspect of it is very much easy to like, it can devolve into hipsterdom. Not that Bap does it himself, but rather people that hover around the sort of like scene, right? Whereas I feel like other groups that don't exactly like Bap, they have different sort of currencies with different sectors, but now that's sort of like going away because of embracing a lot of like online ghettoism. But no, I would complicate that thesis though, because you have to realize this is very terminally millennial type of stuff in terms of the ironic detachment, but also, and Bap is correct about this, by the way, ironic detachment, but there's a cult of normalcy that is more of the political left, right? Because they have such an ability to engineer the culture carte blanche.
Yeah.
That they're the ones that say, touch grass, drink an IPA, fuck your fat wife. And listen, I like fat girls, okay? But as people know, the criticism of like, touch grass, go to a bush party, drink an IPA, have a normal one. That is the millennial irony left. That is the mainstream culture. That is like people, you know, wine moms that watch Law and Order SVU, that talk about Stacey's and Chads and incels, right? So the cult of normalcy is very much the political left. And so when Bap says that, it's very controversial, because you figure that the left has basically created a shibboleth of celebrating alternative counterculture. But that isn't really the case, because as we know, mainstream counterculture, if that is such a term, is consented to by the elites. Yeah. So the recent Sam Smith shit, right? Like that is like terrible. Like Orrin McIntyre hit the nail on the head in his Substack. Well, actually, it wasn't Substack. It was his daily the Blaze article, where it's like he basically this is banal because it's mainstream culture, right?
Yeah.
So the dissidents,
Yeah.
you would figure in Americans, the Americans complicated because they have such a like a liberal spectrum that you'd figure the conservative, like right-wing people, that they're like the Reaganite Fox News boomer that voted for Trump, right? The MAGA-tards. Like I that's what even like Yarvin, Yarvin, he really slipped his mask when he started saying MAGA-tard. We all know that he's of a particular liberal tech Silicon Valley class. And of course his family was, and his family was in the elites and all that. So, but when you really look at it,
as he reminds us every chance that he gets. Anyway, sorry, not talking.
My mother was kissed on the cheek by Joe Biden.
And then he says us. That's why I say we need a drinking game for every time he calls himself elite. It's just like every article. It's like, us elites. The thing is that it's like, all right, man.
The dark, the beautiful, people.
This is said with love.
No, but Yarvin's
said with love. If you're
exactly, but Yarvin's the perfect like symbol of someone who has elite mainstream acceptability somewhat, but can venture into the sort of like effete hipsterdom of the reactionary, because it's the reactionary, it's the right winger now who has taken up the mantle of like not just counterculture, but also being like a terminal weirdo that doesn't really fit into the cult of normalcy. And the way I say that, like, here's the thing: you have to separate like the sort of the media picture and the pastiche of that, which is like Curtis Yarvin and like Paul Joseph Watson saying like conservatism's the new punk rock, and the actual like Twitter frog schizo that is like terminally not optical in any sense of the word. So it's this weird space where the left, they're the cult of normalcy, and then you have this, you mentioned that marketing movement, right? That's a very like Gen X millennial, like late 90s, early 2000s, like ironic guerrilla marketing. This is, do you remember the Oatly thing where all the frogs reacting to that Oatly brand, right?
Yeah. We're
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, just a little bit.
So you'll like
just a little bit. But yeah.
No, but you'll like what I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll like this. You'll like this. So Oatly, they got all the frogs. They got Rog Nationalists and BAP and Zero HP Lovecraft, all the frogs to react to the marketing guy, right? That was running the account. But I saw the brilliance of it because Oatly did this campaign in the early 2000s where it was like ironic, like, yeah, we know this is terrible, but you're going to like it anyways, with like the bold lettering. Total 1990s guerrilla marketing throwback that millennials and Gen Xers, they just like, chef's kiss, right?
Yeah.
So
you don't mean the early 2000s. You mean like a couple years. You mean like 3 years ago.
Yeah. But they were appropriating the early 2000s.
Oh, they were appropriating the early 2000s. Yeah, got it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that ironic Gen Xer. Like, it's sort of like, do you remember No Soda?
No.
That was selling in Starbucks?
No.
It was like No Soda. It's like, we're not a brand, but we're a brand.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that postmodern, snarky. So they were So, but it was brilliant because they got all of these Twitter reactionaries that talk about seed oils and degeneracy and how it's turning your physiognomy into like a hideous, like a Marigoblin cryptoid. And so it was brilliant because they were engaging with criticism, but they were doing this very snarky, millennial, ironic, like, yeah, we know this is going to transmogrify you, but it's like, you're going to like it anyways, because now you're sticking it to the chuds by buying Oatly. Yeah. And so that was brilliant. So the guy that ran that Twitter account, it was a girl, actually. I got to commend because that was like amazing marketing, just like using reactionary, neurotic health theory celdom to market your soy slop, right? Replace the S with a G, and you know what I mean, right? It's the slop, because like Oatly is like ghastly, like seed oils and
it's made out of literally rapeseed oil is what it's called, which is canola oil, which is just these garbage seeds that are pressed, and they get the oil out of it because it's the cheapest possible thing in existence. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So let's say you actually just you use a lot of euphemisms.
Yeah.
You do this thing, you say the Austrian painter, and you say the gamer word, and you say the heaven site for Twitter for some reason. So I'll just say that's I mean, I don't I don't want to like reveal what they are if you don't like it, but why do you do that all the time?
YouTube OPSEC, because I like being monetized.
Oh, but
also it
say that
avoids
stuff on Twitter, they don't monetize. You can't say the word and then it'll detect it on Twitter. Is that why? Or sorry, on YouTube.
on YouTube. Yeah. Oh, also Twitter. Like I was like the way I survived for many years was basically doing leet speak and like doing OPSEC words, like and not like allude. Also, like if you like go out there and you like post spinny wheels or the Austrian painter, mid-century German leader, then you will basically paint a target in your back, especially the fact that I'm a face and a name. You'll paint a target in your back for certain people that like to track the right wing, you know who, right? So you basically, yeah, and that's why I avoid rallies, by the way. I avoid IRL, apart from meeting people that I know and trust. I tend to avoid any sort of like protest. I didn't even go to the convoys. My aunt did, but I didn't go because I knew that people would like, they would, if I was photographed, it's like, you know what I mean? Especially the way that Trudeau reacted to it. But people that are like more, like, here's the thing. The way I justify it is that, yes, eventually you want to get to a stage in the development of the right wing in North America where it's like more acceptable to like go out there and protest. But it's a losing strategy for now for obvious reasons. And I'm also not like a quote unquote leader of a movement. Like that's not my goal, right? That's not my mission. But also it's just like upset. Like, I mean, I have much more, I allude to different things. Like, it's funny. Catherine D said this. She's like, you're amazing at alluding to things without going totally overboard. So you like kind of keep everyone happy. Like, I hate to say it. That's what I do. Like I identify, like I sympathize and identify with a lot of the more edgier stuff, but yet when it comes to like verbalizing it and like basically immolating yourself in front of the world, it's like I've made conscious steps towards like even just like the word heaven site is not an edgy thing. Well, it kind of is, because heaven site was made by the Amarna forums, right?
No, so okay, so no, I don't. Where does the Amarna? It's Amarna, right? Yeah. So they're like a forum of hardcore incels, basically.
In a sense, no, I wouldn't say that. There's something beyond, like they're like the anime racist profile pictures. If you see one, you know one, right? So no, even just talking about them, I feel like I'm reifying them, and they wouldn't like that. But
yeah, no, right, I mean, exactly. I'm not trying to do right. I'm not trying to like do anything out of line either. So, but why the heaven site? I guess is what I'm just trying to say.
Well, this is what I'm getting at. So, they have a concept. Like, for example, a lot of these accounts, right? They post a lot of edgy stuff that I don't exactly agree with, right? But they get banned every week and they come back, right? So the Amarnites, there was this quote, I believe it came from either like Smead or it came from Atrazine Groiper, that said, the millennial conceives of this place as a hell site, as a site that drags you down and prevents you from touching grass. In other words, preventing you from engaging in the cult of normalcy. Because Twitter is the hyper-real discourse war feeder that brings you a sort of, but at the same time, this is why I think Elon bought Twitter, because it delivers you a capacity into looking into the creation of where the sort of global brain is heading, the creation of ideas and thoughts and memes. And so the Amarnites, they say the millennial, through his ironic fail son detachment, because let's face it, we like the one thread on Amarna forums that described the millennial is perfect. It said that the millennial is the constant disappointment generation, right? We're terminally frustrated and disappointed by our circumstances because we were promised a boomer existence.
Yeah,
right?
we're the perfect reflection of the naivety of the boomers.
Yeah, exactly. So the naivety of the boomers, but the inability to achieve the socioeconomic existence of the boomer.
Exactly. And, right.
But also the excess of the boomer. The sort of like, I partied, I did the 70s key party, but then I got married in the white picket fence and the corporate job, blah, 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 right? So the millennial is like the Jon Stewart, like everything is ironic, this ironic snark.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, I hate this I hate this hell site. I wish I could go and touch grass, but my corporate media job where I'm basically a serf to the culture industry, where it's like I have to write blog posts about like listicles about like, what's Disney films that are problematic or whatever. But the Amarnites that are largely Zoomers that grew up on the internet, that grew up on Chan culture, that grew up on the sort of total what's the opposite of deference? The total like irreverence of everything and being sincere about it. They're like, no, we conceive of it as a heaven site, because the heaven site delivers you into the truly online experience of like saying that, okay, there's no going back. This is where we're at, and just deal with it. But the millennials, they have this like nostalgia complex of like, oh my God, I wish it was like my childhood where we weren't terminally online. Yeah. And so like millennials are spiritual boomers in a way. But the Amarnites, not just the Amarnites, but like most Zoomers that are like hyper political, like, no, this is like the terms of engagement. This is the world that we know. We don't even remember the pre 9/11 world. Deal with it, live with it. This is the heaven site, because the heaven site can deliver you into the total irreverence of all being. Yeah. So when they like, listen, I'm not going to say something edgy, like posting the ack hang memes, that's like some kind of revolutionary act. It's not. It's like just trolling trans people, whatever. But the spirit of that sort of like early internet total irreverence of all things is something the millennials lost, because we bought into the cult of normalcy, because we want to be normal. We want to touch grass, but we can't. We want to live in our heckin' wholesome homestead with our heckin' wholesome, tech job wife that isn't a polycule, that wasn't a polycule. But through the power of, finding religion, all of a sudden my wife is no longer, a slatternly woman. So I think like the reason that they conceive of it as a heaven site is because all of this stuff is laid bare, right? Yeah. It really can give transgressive ideas a life onto its own, even if they get banned every week. Maybe it's a purgatory site. Maybe it's more like purgatory, but who knows, right? So yeah. I hope I'm explaining anything. If you have any questions,
you did. No, that was a very good and very illuminating description of a lot of different factors going on. So I think you did a great job of explaining that. All right, let's move on to the next topic here, which is content. I want to talk about content for a second, which is you call yourself, your project, the Content-Minded Corner. It used to be called, I believe, the Aesthetic Content-Minded Corner.
Yeah.
So,
well, because Content Minded is my podcast, I have to stay on brand. So,
right. Yeah. So, I want to talk about like content here. So, you've talked a lot about propaganda versus art. I think you have a great appearance on New Right. I think that's actually their best episode with you on there, because you get Matt really excited. Matt is like so excited because you guys are both kind of theory cells, no offense, but like you guys both really like the theory references. And it's very hard to keep up with because you're referencing all these like deep theory like Foucault, and but it's great. It's a great episode. And you talked in that episode about content versus propaganda and versus art, right? So I think that you are saying, and with what right-wing art means and everything like that. In your I'm going to link this to some of your other thought, which is this essay that you sent me, which I think was like your in school essay, some essay about a new pale horse, right? And you
Oh, that was the one that started it all. Yeah,
that was like your first essay. And you have this quote in there. Horkheimer and Adorno also had similar observations, lamenting the death of creativity in mass culture. Amusement itself becomes an ideal, taking the place of higher values it eradicates from the masses by repeating them in even more stereotyped form than the advertising slogans paid for by private interests. Inwardness, the subjectivity restricted form of truth, was always more beholden to the outward rulers than it imagined. And then what I'm trying to get at here, art, content, propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
What is the distinction between these three things in today's world? Because it seems like that's kind of what that quote is talking about. And in talking about right-wing art, you also talk about this a lot. Like, what are the difference, I guess, in those three things? Or do you see any difference in them?
That's a good question, actually. That's a funny. I had the moment of like, wow, I actually wrote that, because it's been years since I actually like read through the whole thing. Like, so the context of that was a paper I wrote in grad school for a very good prof I had who she was I was in her Frankfurt School class, and she like really opened my eyes to the possibilities of a lot of like critical theory, and her and my supervisor. And so I wrote this and I mentioned the video artist Nobody TM in the end, which became very popular in 4chan. And actually, the reason E. Michael Jones is very popular is because Nobody TM's most popular video had a lecture by E. Michael Jones, or a radio interview.
It's Nobody TM?
Yeah, Nobody trademark. Nobody TM.
Yeah, Nobody trademark. Okay. Nice.
There was a website, but everything got erased because Nobody TM felt like the project was over and it was completed, and all of existence becomes Nobody TM now. So these
wait,
Nobody TM was like the last.
What did you say?
Yeah,
existence. What did you say about assistance?
I said that all of existence now becomes like a Nobody TM edit. So
oh yeah, I've never even heard of Nobody TM on before. You had mentioned it briefly on that podcast, but I don't even know what that is. So like, what is that?
So Nobody TM was, there was a website. It was the last true form of like video art on the internet, right? So a lot of these edits he would find, like, apparently it was a whole group of people, but they would find like obscure footage from different like schizos and people like at the utter edges of humanity, and would use these digital and even analog forms of layering to create these edits. And a lot of it had, like, I would even say metaphysical messaging and values. Like the first season of the episodes was very much more like explicitly political, sort of like a lot of like the sort of right-wing art forms that you see, like a lot of editing styles, comes from Nobody TM. So like Sam Hyde certainly is very similar.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul Joseph Watson, the whole like modern degeneracy series, that comes from Nobody TM. That's basically like a more like mainstream mass produced version of what Nobody TM was doing.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the degeneracy compilation stuff. Yeah. So Nobody TM was doing all of this stuff back in the like 2010s, and 4chan got a hold of it and it became like a source of speculation, sort of like a lot of like these deep okay, like these YouTubers that do like deep internet stuff that's usually like scary dark web. They'll never talk about Nobody TM because Nobody TM's too inherently like, political, whatever. But I have seen a few videos on Randy Prozac. If you look up Randy Prozac, kind of similar stuff, right? But Nobody TM intersected with a lot of like not just dissident culture, but like avant-garde type of video art, right? That has a long history dating back to the 70s, like with Namjoon Pike and all that. So Nobody TM was like a huge inspiration still to this day. Like I still want to write more about Nobody TM. And so I wrote this essay, and at the very end, I mentioned Nobody TM. I specifically mentioned Adam Wallace's article on Nobody TM. It was called Postmodern Anti-Modernism, which you could still find if you like look on the West Coast reaction. Because then what happened was I emailed Nobody TM, and with this essay, and the head editor like loved it so much that it was on the main website, the essay. And then later I was contacted by Adam Wallace to write for his like dissident like web magazine called West Coast Reactionaries. And I was there for a number of years. I was at Thermometer magazine after that. And that essay was like the first one that I released publicly. And that was the one that sort of like started this whole, you know, whatever trajectory I'm on, right? It's been like, it will be like, I believe almost 10 years next year that I've been like, had like a, you know, terminally online presence. So, you know, you asked the question of like, what's the difference between the three of those things? I would say that nowadays, there really isn't much of a difference because we do live in like a hyper real sort of like world where propaganda intersects with art, art intersects with content. Like content is like the catch-all of just the experience of being a creative person on the internet, because you have to like wear so many different hats. Like I'm an artist, podcaster, writer. What can you say? Oh, content creator. There you go. Even though like I don't like that term, it's like that's the term, content creator. So I feel like the problem is when you start to create things that have an explicit message, that veers into propaganda, because the work of art should be the creation of a world in a way, in a sense. And every piece of art does that. So when that world is sort of reliant upon mere commentary of the real rather than exposing what is in front of us on a deeper level, then that basically serves like the utilitarian purpose of propaganda. But it's hard because you have to comment on the world that you live in, as all artists do, but to do it in a way that isn't explicitly propagandistic is very difficult, because the world we live in is fabulized to such a point where what happens online eventually percolates to the quote unquote real. And there's no distinction between the two. There's no distinction between virtuality and actuality in a way. And so these distinctions that you set, like you were alluding to, become very blurred, because what you can create in the work of art not should ideally become timeless, right? In the sense that you're not just like dating yourself to a particular moment, but it should have a universal element to it. But this becomes difficult because the world plays with these categories like it's putty, and everything melts into each other because of the sort of the ability of like telecommunicative technologies to deliver us an experience of like even the understanding of collective thought like never before. And so it's like when you're bathing in collective thought and collective you know, memetics all the time, as an artist it becomes very difficult to bracket yourself out of the timely to become untimely, as Nietzsche said, right? Like it's untimeliness is very difficult in our world. So you have the option of going through the timely to arrive at something that is untimely. And I feel like the quote unquote dissident right wing people that are more artistically inclined, they're trying to find the untimely through the worldly and the timely, because it's hitting us every single day. Because every avenue of like pop culture and even the art world, like everywhere we go, is basically controlled by our enemies, and it has to pump out that propaganda 24/7. So to allow yourself the space to not be propagandistic becomes in a way like a quote unquote countercultural moment of like reaction, right? Like even just like being a landscape painter and being like, you know what, I just like pretty pictures. That, having been a landscape painter for a lot of years too, like it's even that becomes politicized, because it's like, well, I just want to worship beauty. Oh, but worshiping beauty is fascist.
Yeah.
So
right,
it's,
right.
you know, so all these categories become complicated because they're so like bled into each other. But anyways, yeah, I'm talking too much right now.
Well, but why do you call it content? Why did you choose to call it content minded?
Oh boy, this is autism on my own part. Because content is a mindset to me. Content is a higher pursuit. content is like and I realize how terminally like spurgy I'm sounding right now.
No,
But
I don't think so.
to me, content is a mindset, because content to me is like an inner obligation. It's like, and I wrote this in my recent article, like it's like what Kandinsky called inner necessity. It's harmonizing the world around you with your ability to not just like comment upon it, but to create something anew from it. And so content is in a way like a calling. Like Heidegger says, it calls forth, right? I know I'm sounding like I can hear the way I'm sounding right
No,
now.
no,
Like,
no, no, no.
oh,
No,
but
I don't think you said, yeah.
no, but you know, like, okay, so what I mean is that content is the backbone of what the post 2016 world has been. The poster delivering real world cultural and political even change.
Yeah, well, that's what's
Yeah.
here's what's really interesting. This is like the point that I want to get to is the meme. Is the meme content? Is the meme art, or is the meme propaganda? And because content,
Yeah.
like the way that you're using content is actually the old school way of using content.
Yeah.
Whereas now the word content. So let me just read this little bit from Scorsese. So Scorsese has this incredible essay about Federico Fellini in Harper's that he wrote a while ago, and I just came across it like when he wrote it, and I was like, "Wow, this is really good." And he's talking about content, the word content, what it means in the Netflix sense, in the head chief of content at Netflix sense of content, right?
Yeah.
So he says, as the art of, flash forward to the present day, as the art of cinema is being systematically devalued, sidelined, demeaned, and reduced to its lowest common denominator, content.
Yeah, he meant cape ship, by the way. That's what he's talking about.
Well, but hold on. So, but as recently as 15 years ago, the term content was heard only when people were discussing the cinema on a serious level. It was contrasted with and measured against form. And that's what you mean by content, right? You're saying like that, right? Then gradually it was used more and more by people who took over media companies, most of whom who knew nothing about the history of the art form, or even cared enough to think about that they should.
Just like pro wrestling, by the way. Pro wrestling is a similar trajectory, but
right. Content became a business term for all moving images. A David Lee movie, a cat video, a Super Bowl commercial, a superhero sequel, a series episode. It was linked, of course, not to the theatrical experience, but to home viewing on the streaming platforms that have come to overtake the movie-going experience. On the one hand, it's been good for filmmakers, on myself included. On the other hand, it has created a situation where everything is presented to the viewer on a level playing field, which sounds democratic, but isn't.
Yeah.
And then he says, curating isn't undemocratic or elitist. It's an act of generosity. You're sharing what you love and what has inspired you. Algorithms, by definition, are based on calculations that treat the viewer as a consumer and nothing else. So he's like, and I totally agree with this.
100%. Like he's right. Yeah, 100%.
Art has been reduced. Like they don't, your use of content is referring to something completely different than what 95% of people mean when they say content. People, when they say content now, people mean shit to fill up my day.
Yeah.
Like
it's like I remember this one. I don't know why I watched this. This was a year or two ago. It was an interview. It was like some genius lyrics interview with that backpack kid. You know, the little the Zoomer backpack Zoomer, the rapper. Well, he's like this like stupid SoundCloud faded rap where it's like talking about brushing his teeth or whatever. And he's like, and they're like, why do you talk about like having ketchup with your burger and brushing teeth? He's like, well, it's content. Everything's content. It's like, that's content. I'm like, wow. That's like, okay. So Scorsese is brilliant here because it's brilliant that you brought it up. Actually, I quite enjoy this because I've never like thoroughly explained like what I mean by content. So like, of course I'm using the Heideggerian like calling thing. It calls forth to you. But to me, content is the form. It's something that should be ideally a spiritual idea of putting forth a sort of reconciliation with your own thoughts about the world to the world, right? It's a calling. It unites the world with the sign, right? With you're cemented within time, but you want to reach beyond time, right? But most people, what they mean by content, they mean like the culture industry. Like they mean like mass produced like Netflix has basically destroyed cinema, right? In the sense that everything becomes absorbed instantaneously, but also notice how it's series that is more important than cinema. The small screen is more important than the big screen,
Yeah.
because people love the endless stream. Like what basically what Adorno said in Dialectic of Enlightenment, Hork Adorno, they said that the endless stream of trash. People love the trough bucket, right? Like they love series because it's like you can consume a high volume of it, but you don't have the same like sort of like low time preference engagement you have with cinema, where it's like I'm sitting here for 2 or 3 hours and observe. Or for example, like if you're a real cinephile, there's like a few mountains you have to climb. Like for example, recently I climbed the Mountain of Satan Tango by Bellatar. That's a
What's that?
7-hour film.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's the 7-hour Bellatar film, where it's like about this mining, like this post-Soviet mining village, right? And it's like it's very perspectival with like the different characters, like filming the different perspectives of like the same day, right? So it's a monumental work of cinema, but it's like totally like a slog, because a lot of it is like taking Bresson and Tarkovsky and like making it more like grueling and nihilistic, and like you have to like work to like see these like very long drawn out like landscape scenes and everything. So most people don't have attention for that, obviously, for obvious reasons. And so content becomes the effluvia of the culture industry and everyday experience. But I think like the content mindset is something that should be a higher ideal. It's something that should be like you value, like creating the work of art. It's something that you feel a necessity to put out to the world, even if it doesn't make you any money, even if it doesn't make you, even if it gets you canceled, even if it like, even if it like doesn't give you any clout or whatever. The content is the thing, the ideal that we strive for in these online sectors. It's something that we slave over. It's something that like what we're doing right now, I feel is like to like pull you back to the meta, like the sinews of what we're doing in podcasting, like to create content that is engaging. Not everybody can do that. But the problem is though that everyone thinks they can do it, but they can't. I mean, maybe they can, but like, anyone could do anything given enough, like, given enough IQ points and experience and talent and utilizing whatever, like, you could pretty much, you can make a semi-interesting podcast, right? I mean, I'm not the greatest podcast in the world, but like, I feel like, being gregarious enough, you could hack it. But the point being is that what we're doing right now is like sort of that pursuit of that mindset. It's sort of like, we feel like what we're doing, it's not that just like, okay, we're important and we have to do it, and like the world values our contribution, man. Like, no, that's like very hard, that's very like pseudo intellectual bullshit. But it's more of like you feel like within yourself the content should shine through, and that's what should matter, not the sort of like e-celeb parasociality bullshit. It should be like, ignore all of that. But the ironic part is that on the internet, you need at least a little bit of that parasociality. You need a little bit of that poison, a little bit of that coal to get to the gem, right? Because most people, they're not going to like jive with something that doesn't have a personality. But when you create that personality, when you give your space, so you give yourself that space of openness on the internet, then all of those dangers that comes about. It's like what Foucault said, right? He said that it's not that everything is like evil, it's that everything is dangerous, meaning that like everything has that potentiality to go into a mode that is ill-suited for the purpose that you set out to do, right? So, I'm not like the greatest looking guy in the world. I don't have the greatest voice, but it's like I feel like to move past all of that, eventually people start to come up with this attachment to you because of your content, because of like you are a part of the thing that you produce and vice versa. So it's almost like when the leftoids, when they say that separating the art from the artist, they say, "Oh, that's impossible." They're right. It is impossible.
Yeah, they're actually right about that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we're like learning that more and more.
Oh yeah. Definitely. But they explain the content mindset.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what was the professional wrestling thing you were gonna analogy? You were saying.
Oh yeah, professional wrestling's very similar in that like people that were in the business, but then it got invaded by corporations and by Reddit and by like people that didn't really understand. And so like they created this like media monster. And then it's like then it all became like just marketing shit to children. And then it's like then you know that's basically Vince McMahon in a nutshell. It's like the way he like destroyed the territories and you know, so it's like people that don't really understand an industry coming into it. But also, like, I have this analogy that comes from pro wrestling all the time. I say it like almost every day on my podcast, where I say, even though I don't like him, I don't agree with him, because he's also a shitlib too. But the famous wrestling manager Jim Cornette, he has this thing where he says, they took the mark from the stands and they put him in the ring, and so that's how he explains like a lot of these like newer wrestlers you see like from the indies or that go to like AEW or whatever. They have very much of like this self-marky, like I can do a million flips, I can do a million moves.
Oh, interesting.
I don't care about the buildup of the match or the storyline. So my thing is that we took the lurkers from the stands and we made them into posters.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean,
right. And so
we made them into, or we just made them into, we made them into artists because they are posters, right?
That too, yeah.
Well, no, but are you saying this is an internet evolution, that the old posters used to be more kind of distinguished stars and now everybody is a poster? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so most definitely. No, but I think every industry goes through this trajectory as there's more like mainstream attention.
It becomes, that's a great theory that like you could come up with a great theory that is like, as a sport or a theatrical thing grows,
or even artwork,
it starts to become, it starts to take on the appearance of its audience more and more, maybe. But I don't think that is that really true though, because it's like sports, football, it's the opposite, right? Football, it's like gone the other direction. It's gotten further and further away from its audience, you know, because it's
same with hockey.
Yeah, it's like, because now it's just huge beasts, you know, even these guys that look normal are like 6'5". But I wonder if movies, has theater and because theater and movies have started to take on the appearance of the, I don't know, it's an interesting.
I feel like professional sports ball, it doesn't. Because there's a lot of like refinement culture there, like where the athletes themselves have to be like at peak. This is where pro wrestling and UFC, I mean, despite mixed martial arts and like pro wrestling not being the same thing, even though there's crossovers, because as you know, like here's me being a pro wrestling spurg. As you know, MMA was created by pro wrestling. You know this, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. Well, in Japan, the first like legitimate mixed martial arts league came from Pancrase, which was professional wrestlers that were trained by Antonio Inoki, who recently passed away last year. RIP to a legend. Antonio Inoki, for those who don't know, in Japanese wrestling is, imagine if you were to take Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan and The Rock and like put them together, and Vince McMahon as well, and put them all together. That's Antonio Inoki. That's how important he is in Japan. Because Antonio Inoki, what he did in the 70s was, in New Japan Pro Wrestling, he would take different fighting styles. Like he would take Billy Robinson, who was a Greco-Roman grappler from England. He fought Muhammad Ali as a wrestler, boxing. And that, I believe the famous show in, where was it? Was it in Cork and Hall? Or was it in the Tokyo Dome? Where he fought Muhammad Ali. So he took all these different. I believe it was a draw, because they really like Antonio Inoki was trying to do like a grappling style where he was on the floor, but then Muhammad Ali tried to like, so
Yeah.
I believe someone actually trained Muhammad Ali to give him like a few tips on pro wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Before he did it. But so he would take like Japanese like judo stars, he would take like professional karate people, and he would like put them together, right? And so Antonio Inoki, he basically was creating the proto version of mixed martial arts. So people that talk about like pro wrestling and MMA, like there's a long history there. And as you know, like a lot of pro wrestlers came from MMA and vice versa. Like Minoru Suzuki, Brock Lesnar, uh, Sakuraba, like one of the top like stars of MMA of all time, the Gracie Killer. He's like, I believe currently he was recently the tag team champion in Pro Wrestling Noah, with Sugiura. So like but anyways, I think wrestling is different because it's a theater, because it's a performance.
Right. Yeah.
So any sort of like art form or performance or anything like that, it eventually will not just reflect its audience, but it will refine itself to where the audience thinks that it has the ability to put themselves like in the ring or in the gallery or in the theater space or whatever. So professional sports is obviously different because like with football and hockey, like for example, like I recently started watching hockey. It's been like years since I was a kid. Because being a Maple Leafs fan, it's like it's pretty blackpilling, right? So like when I was a kid, like I had like it was a pretty good group. Like I remember watching like my favorite my favorite star was of course Ty Domi, the ultimate goon, the last goon, right? So that was when they had like Cujo and Matt Sundin. So recently watching hockey, it's like all that stuff that Don Cherry was complaining about for years, it's true. Like they corporatized it. They made yes, it's true. They made the rules so they could play longer, right? Like they could actually like play a game with a like interruption. But like the fighting is discouraged. Like it's like, come on, bro. Like the refs, like as soon as they see the gloves come off, it's like the refs go right like in there right away. It's like, come on, this isn't hockey. Hockey was a working class chud sport, right?
Yeah.
So no, but football is the same way. I'm sure if you're, I don't follow football, but I'm sure if you're a football fan, it's like the same refinement culture, right? But when it comes to the theater and the arts, you have this manifestation of people like tricking themselves into thinking that they could do it. Like rap, for example, rap music is like plagued by this. It's like everyone has a mixtape, everyone has a SoundCloud, right? So yeah, it's like the same phenomenon. It's like the same like taking the marks from the stands and like putting them into it.
Yeah, it's also kind of a 15 minutes of fame thing coming true.
Yeah.
Here's an analogy for you. Is theater as to gay people, pro wrestling is to fat people?
Yes. If you look at, I hate to say it, like as much as the ratification of pro wrestling is sort of like, if you like look into the stands in AEW, like I don't watch a lot of AEW because like I'm more of like a New Chad guy, right? So, but if you look at the stands, you'll see like a fat soy beard guy with like protect trans children sign. I had this tweet. I don't know if you saw this, Isaac. I had this tweet, but I deleted it because I didn't want like R squared circle to like pick up on it, right? Where it was a sign where it was Kenny Omega pointing in favor to this like soy beard guy that had the protect trans children sign. And I took this picture of this fan from like 1991 at a house show that had a sign. It was like a working class dude with like a mustache that had a sign that said Shawn Michaels has AIDS. It was like, that's great. And then I said, like, what happened to wrestling fans? What happened?
Dude, I loved Shawn Michaels. He was my favorite ever.
Oh, really, eh?
Yeah. I grew up pretty into WWF back when it was WWF.
Man.
And
Shawn Michaels, he inspired a lot of those like indie guys because he was so athletic.
Yeah, and he was so cool. No,
Yeah.
I was like came up in the Stone Cold era. That was
I was like right after. I was
yeah,
like
you were the
RVD.
Rock. You were
Yeah,
the
the Rock,
right?
RVD. Yeah. But then John Cena just like ruined it for me.
I
So
know, and he's like, God, so lame. Like John Cena sucks compared to those guys. Like John Cena is so bad, you know, like he's so squeaky clean and gross. And people forget that The Rock, I mean, it's so ironic because The Rock became, you know, the John Cena of Hollywood.
yeah,
But he
they
was
put him
a
everywhere.
bad guy. Everybody forgets that The Rock was a bad guy. You
The
know, he was
corporate
the foil.
champion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so like it's funny that he had it totally reversed. And now every movie he's in just is total shit. It's like if The Rock is in it, just don't see it. You know it's gonna be terrible.
Do you think he's gonna run for the Democrats eventually?
Ah, maybe. I could
what
see
a world we
them.
live in.
That would be a good move for them.
It would, yeah.
It would be the best thing they could do, honestly.
Because they have like the Obama angle.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, all politics is pro wrestling, as you know.
Right.
So,
right.
you know, Donald Trump was there with Stone Cold back in like 2006.
Yeah, right. Didn't he get stunned? Did Trump
he got
get
stunned?
Yeah.
But I believe he dogpiled Vince McMahon in one scene. That was the CNN. That was the meme that the fucking 19-year-old kid, he made this meme of like Donald Trump tackling Vince McMahon, but it was like Donald Trump, it was the CNN logo on Vince McMahon. CNN sued this kid. They doxed him and sued him.
They sued him for a meme? Oh my
for a WWE meme.
There's no way they won that.
I think they had to throw it out of court because of the backlash it got.
And also there's no, I mean, from a trademark standpoint, there's absolutely no, you can't pay for that. They were just trying to scare people.
I think even Donald Trump paid for his legal fund, this kid.
Yeah. Okay, let's finish this up by returning to our original core point, which is basically the taxonomy of our scene, which you are a total master of. So you talked about this in Confederacy of Shit posters, where I appreciate you saying that it was not, you know, your goal wasn't to actually create a taxonomy, but more to sort of set up I guess, perspective on avant-garde art. So from my perspective, what I want to know first is, in our scene, what are the criteria for being like a name? How long do you have to be around? And like, how many followers do you have to have? Like, how long until you're on Gio's map? Or what do you need to be on Gio's
listen, you
map?
have to be racist, you have to be sexist, you have to hate women and minorities, and you're good. I feel like I was thinking about this morning when I was taking a shower. And for those who don't know, yes, I actually do take showers. I'm not, you know, my appearance will shock you, but you know, there was a certain forum that said it was a sweaty, a fat, sweaty Anna Kachayan simp. So maybe, I don't know.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'11".
Oh, okay. So you're just like you're
normal,
taller than average, but you're not like a giant. You're not like a huge giant. Like
no. My old man is like, he was. I believe he got a little bit shorter in his older age, but he was like 6'2". So like I'm just normal height. I wish I was 6'2". I wish I was like my old man, but you know, it's like imagine a 6'2" like literal Mario looking dude. That's my old man. Yeah, so no, but how long? Okay, so this is complicated because I feel like obviously if you were part of the original Frog Twitter wave back in like 2015-16, then you know you're golden, right? Like and people have like, oh god. Speaking of drama, certain people have dramatically left the scene because I'm above it. You know, it's like when I wrote my, I'll give you like a background, then I'll answer your question. So when I wrote like, first of all, you asked in the show notes, you said what happened in the series. The honest answer is that I have like a stack of books next to me of references, and like I have notes, but I just been caught up with so many other things, like trying to like when I freed myself of Break the Rules and I did my own thing, and 2022 also like trying to lose a lot of weight, being plagued with like chronic foot pain, and you know, like just I haven't had the time So I will come back with it this year. Obviously, I want to write part 2. But anyways, and plus I'm recently found out that I have another writing engagement
That's
that I
good.
was offered. I was a small book offer.
That's great.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So not by people you would think though in the scene, but like another smaller niche book publisher. So anyways, I started the scene because one night I was really down on myself. It was because I was arguing with my former co-host, even though he didn't treat me like one. He didn't actually, I wasn't recognized as a co-host, but that's all drama. That's all drama. So, and of course, I was talking about certain people who dramatically left the scene, but I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So, I was really like questioning what I was doing, like, because for that's 2 years, I was like in this daze, like during the Covidian era, and like I wasn't sure of like where I could go next. Like I basically had it in my mind that I have to do, like I have to go on my own, because for years I was always like under the umbrella of like other people, right? Whether it was like, Thermometer Magazine, then Break the Rules, So I tweeted out something about like how to be a part of this thing doesn't really pay off in the end. I was basically blackpilling. I was blackpilling. And I got dogpiled, like by everybody. And a lot of people that like, I had very insightful replies by people that were friends of mine. But then I also had people that are just like, oh, fuck you, like, would you expect a paycheck from this? Like, yeah. So I basically took a Twitter break for like 2 weeks. And then I figured, like, instead of going down the road of other people, another fat guy as well, not to name names. Keep on. So a guy who's also personally stabbed me in the back. I said to myself, and I said this in the article, the first part, I said, like, instead of going down the road of like, all you people are like never gonna go anywhere, and you're all fucked in the head, and you're all like a bunch of like chuds that are grifters, and you don't really care about anything. Instead of like dramatically announcing my exit from the sector, from the scene, this thing of ours, as Thomas77 says, I said, if you truly love and you care about something, because you feel that in 2016, we truly did create something unique, right? A true online right-wing avant-garde. If you love something and you invest time in it and care about it and think about it, then why would I say, I had this negative experience, and so fuck you guys, I hate you guys, you're a bunch of idiots, blah, blah, blah. Why would I do that when you invested so much time and care into something and friendships along the way? It's not about the clout, it's the friendships we made along the way. So I figured, like, instead of turning this negative experience into like this bitter, like, I'm better than you guys, why not say, okay, what are we doing? How do we get here? What do we want to accomplish? And what does this mean in terms of the legacy of whatever you want to call it, the frogs, the E-Right, whatever. What are we doing and where are we going, right? That is what I wanted to do. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to write this series. And Confederacy of Shit Posters is like such a great term because it comes from Confederacy of Dumps. Yeah. So I truly wanted to sort of collect myself. And then after being essentially forced to quit my previous podcast for a variety of reasons. And so I always tell people this, when I was starting my series, you know how you could hear it was when I was interviewed by Alex Kashuta the second time, my good friend.
Yeah, I listened to both of those actually. Or
yeah,
at least the first one.
Yeah, but the second one though, and by the way, those two appearances like opened up so many doors for me because of all these people that are like, yo, I heard you on Alex Kashuta. Oh my God. And so, she'll be my, she's a friend for life, right? I know some people don't like her, blah, blah, blah. But
really? Who doesn't like Kashuta?
Well, because they figure, oh, she's selling out to the mainstream or whatever. Like it's, anyone who spoke at the National Conservatism Conference. It's sort of
Oh, I see. I see.
yeah. So
I'm like pretty much following every guest. I don't think I've had one guest that she hasn't had. I've had like two. You know, like everybody, I just listen
yeah.
to her episodes, and then that gives me such an advantage because I already have like heard you guys, so it's fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. So she's interviewed everybody, right? Everybody, except for a few people that don't take a lot of interviews. But
Yeah.
no, so Alex Kashuta opened up a lot of doors for me. But I bring this up because the second episode, the way you hear me speaking and the way I was talking about this series that I was writing, because I believe I came out with the first part and then Alex wanted to interview me for it, right? Already in my head, I was starting to like formulate an exit plan from Break the Rules and to go out on my own. But I just didn't have, not that I didn't have the ability, but I didn't have the sort of confidence in myself to do it because I felt like I couldn't pull it together enough people. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. I felt like ashamed of like asking for money. Of course, now I don't care. I love asking for money.
Really? I need to be more like you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's a way of doing it where you don't piss people off too. But anyways,
well, I've got a whole different thing. Like, it's funny that you're saying, what do you expect a paycheck from that? Like, my answer to that is fuck yes, I do.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I'm spending all my time doing this shit. I better get a fucking paycheck out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't believe in this purity. I don't believe in purity.
No, it doesn't exist anymore.
So, like in my opinion, Charles Bukowski is the purest artist who ever lived. And I always thought that he was this completely pure guy. And he is pure in the sense that he is pure.
Yeah.
But I read his book of letters. That motherfucker was hungry as fuck in terms of business. Behind the scenes, he was emailing his editors, "Where's my money? Where's my fucking thing? Why is this not in another magazine?" And he did go to Hollywood and sell out and not sell out, but he wrote a screenplay of his own shit. And he was the same thing. He was like, fuck these people. I'm going to take their money, but I'm going to talk shit about them. I'm going to write a book, Hollywood, all about them. And, it's like, dude, you can't get purer than Bukowski. And if even he was hungry for the money behind the scenes, like, that's how you should be. If you're not that, then you're a dime square fucking rich kid, like, being hungry 100%. For, I don't agree with this whole purity thing at all. And I think that people really get, I think that that's such a toxic thing. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. You were heading towards answering the how long in the
I'm heading towards it. Yeah. So no, but it's a fair question though. You bring that up because that, to be fair, it's an older ethos of the internet to where this is not serious business and like e-begging, but like that's gone because the internet is the real life now. So it's like so the whole like expectation that, oh no, I'm like a classic Kino Dogme internet guy that's like doesn't expect a paycheck. Like that's an older thing that doesn't exist anymore. And even people like Mr. Medicare, like, I mean, listen, I'm not casting shade because apparently he doesn't have a lot of years left in him because of his cancer and but I know like even him that would like go on about like, oh, people that are e-begging. Even he like did e-begging, right? When the medical bills started piling up, but should be like a thing to look down upon. But I'm just saying, like, people that preach this whole thing about like e-begging is like, that's an older internet thing that doesn't really exist anymore. And it shouldn't be like a shame to make money off the internet. It's just like, if you're investing so much time into it, like you said,
dude, 100%. And I think a big part, what is the number one framework through which all of us exist is all of the anons, all of everybody, their fundamental complaint is my fear is not making money, right? That's what they're saying. They're saying
it's not being able to survive.
Right. I can't be myself without risking my access to money. That's their entire point. And I do feel like a good 50% of them, they like their cage. They don't want out of that cage. They like their plight, and trying to get them out of it, they don't really want to get out because then they would have to, deal with the world. They'd have to But I do think also a good 50% of them, though, also are extraordinarily talented, incredible people who do what the world would be better if they were allowed to be outward without fear, constant fear of, financial disaster. And so I am working towards that. I'm working towards trying to make an economy out of this, and I think that, I think that's where we should try and head, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this probably came up with Bennett, right? Like, because of his exit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
that's
he's the
like
perfect example of all.
that's what I mean. That's what we need. We need like antitrust, like fellowship groups where people that are canceled don't it doesn't dramatically impact them.
Yeah.
Like I think like that model is like that's to me, I feel like that's what we need to invest in. Any like sort of like rich Silicon Valley person that may or may not be lurking our spaces. That's what they need to do. Not this like fucking political influence bullshit. Like, no, you need to create antitrust societies. And you know what? Listen,
wait, what do you mean antitrust? What do you mean antitrust?
Well, like fellowships, antitrust organizations where people that are like down on their luck post cancellation can find employment networks.
Why are you saying antitrust?
Isn't that what they called them in America? Antitrust organizations?
I mean,
I'm thinking
I
of
went
something
to
else.
law school, so antitrust has a very specific meaning.
No, like what do they call those? Like, leftoids have them. What do they call? Where it's like a fellowship, like it's like a social trust. Social trust? Is that what you call it?
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Like that union leader. What was his name? Yeah. Like they call them like fellowships or
something.
They have a word for it, but you know what I mean? Where basically like you can go there if you're like a Democrat, you can get a job. If you've been fired by your employer, you could go to a union.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like basically I think they call it anti. But you know what I'm referring to, right? The sort of I guess States Columbus used to be a bit like that. We need those organizations. I think Bennett, like his exit group, that's like a model. I feel so any like rich person that's lurking our spaces, that's what they need. Not like not like lobbying or anything. Like no, actually like having an ability for frogs to make a living without like post cancellation, post doxing. That's that's I feel like is a noble pursuit. But your question about how do you be how to be taken seriously? Damn, how did I get onto this? Yeah. So, anyways, it's complicated because sometimes follower count does not translate automatically into respect, right? There are a lot of people that either through getting banned or like to keep low numbers or like to be anonymous. There's a lot of people that have a lot of respect who don't have the markers of a quote unquote successful personality brand, right? So it's complicated because ideally your posting should be the metric, right?
You mean your like Twitter posts?
Well, not just your Twitter posts, your blogs, or whatever, your content. Like it should like the poster should reign supreme, right? But I feel like there should be a level of you lurking for a while and getting to know the etiquette and getting to know the scene and knowing like what makes you authentic and what just makes you like an infiltrator. Like that's a very like these are like Zero HP Lovecraft said in his thread, right? Like this very porous, very like hard to like police the borders of, very hard to like get rid of people who are enervating forces.
Yeah, he says from outside it looks like there is some kind of, dare we say, movement.
Yeah.
But there is no movement because no one, not even BAP, can give you anything besides knowledge, and knowledge isn't the currency of a movement. Thinking this is one of the ways democracy makes you stupid. I don't get the last part. What does he mean by the knowledge isn't the currency and that's how democracy makes you stupid? Do you understand that? Because I don't.
Yeah. Oh, so it's funny because the philosopher Byung-Chul Han says something similar in his recent book, Infocracy, which I reviewed, by the way. You could find on my Patreon and also my YouTube, my general review series. So basically, he's saying that in the online world now, this is what Byung-Chul Han says, that in the infocracy that we're living under, that is like controlled by big data, where it's like on a meta level, data and how you arrange data, how do you gather data, that becomes the only metric of truth, right? not discourse. Truth is data. It's everything is broken down into quantifiable units, right? So he's saying that knowledge, and he actually mentions Trump. He mentions 2016, ironically enough, Byung-Chul Han. Knowledge becomes what the currency of the internet is, to give people knowledge, to sell knowledge, to create it.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowledge becomes also beyond that. And he mentions Trump, and he mentions the frogs. He says that knowledge is the identity marker. If you know something, you are a part of something. The red pill, right? We say red pill, black pill, clear pill, right? To be pilled is to know, but also it's your identity, right? So Zero H.P. Lovecraft has said something very similar. He says that to know something, to have this esoteric knowledge the frogs have, to be pilled on the woman question, to be pilled on that other question, right? Starts with a J. So to know something is the formulation and the groundwork of this greater identity of I am a right-wing reactionary, I am America first, I am a Bapian, I am the, I read like the meme, right? Bronze Age mindset been out how long, right?
Yeah, like okay, so you're saying the knowledge is the prerequisite to be the dissident, but the
knowledge is also inherently shaky foundation of identity, right? Because it's just to know. But then how do you formulate your being from knowing something? That is something philosophy is debated about literally for like 3,000 years, 4,000 or 5,000 years, right? So it's like the dialectic of how you know translating into action. I mean,
that's actually a very nuanced point here. So okay, so then Zero, who, maybe one day, once he stops using his stupid voice thing, will come on here. But, the currency, what is the currency of the movement then? If knowledge isn't, and knowledge is just this fake, not fake, but it's not going to get you there. What is the currency of the movement? Action?
No, knowledge is the currency. Knowledge is the currency.
He's saying knowledge isn't the currency of movement. He's saying that. He's saying knowledge isn't the currency of movement. Thinking this is one of the ways democracy makes you stupid.
No, he means that as a criticism because we like to think that knowledge is the currency of a political or a cultural movement.
Right.
But my argument would be that knowledge is the basis of an avant-garde rather than a quote-unquote movement. And so Zero H.P. Lovecraft, he's critiquing people that have come along in the dissident right that like to think that just by disseminating knowledge that creates a movement, right? Like that creates a political movement. But it's not. No, political movement requires conscious action. And so like you need to like quote unquote red pill the masses. But then what do you do with that? And I think the problem is that a lot of like dissident right thinking comes from like libertarianism, and it also comes from the conspiracy movement. Because Alex Jones, for like, and having listened to Alex Jones for like decades, I don't listen to him as much anymore, but like listening to him for like a long time, his whole thing was the awakening of people into the knowledge of the elites or whatever, the New World Order. And so the model of the conspiracy movement dating back to the 1980s and then finding life on the internet has been to awaken people to the awareness of the bloodlines of the Illuminati or the globalists or whatever, right? The reptilians, the Jays, you name it, right? That model is what Zero H.P. Lovecraft is saying, is that we like to think that that is the basis of what we're doing. And we pretend that it is. But when it comes to like a real world political movement, Zero H.P. Lovecraft is saying that no, there's more things in a movement besides knowledge dissemination. But the problem is that the E-right is shackled by this exchange of knowledge. And so therefore, I don't think of it as a movement, and nor does he. We discussed this privately. It's rather an avant-garde than a political movement. And people that like to come along, and I hate to say it, listen, I'm not casting shame, I'm not mentioning names, but people that do like to think of it as a political movement, I mean, look what happened. They got doxxed, they got harassed. Antifa, like, basically made sure that they're salted earth after certain rallies, which I won't name for, YouTube purposes. They were, you know, basically hounded off of every platform. So I don't think it's the fault of them. I mean, okay, yeah, do they share fault? Yes. But does the greater society that have demonized right-wing thinking at fault? Yes. So it's sort of like there's not really blame there. There's blame in people that have like led a lot of people into these events where they can get doxxed and harassed. But at the same time, it's like a catch-22. It's like if you don't have a mass political movement, you can't be taken seriously.
Yeah.
But if you do have, especially in North America, a mass right-wing political movement where you're going out to these rallies, then you're fucked. So it's like, what are you gonna do? Like that. And so what happens is a lot of the smarter people that don't want to lead a movement, they're like, no, we're not about movements. We're about like this knowledge dissemination thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then other people who are more of the activisty types, they're like, no, you're cucked. You're like, what are you talking about? Like you're just afraid of like going out there in public and facing down the riot police or the Antifa like ghouls or whatever, right? So it's like that's always going to be the dividing, like one of the dividing lines on the dissident right or the e-right or whatever we want to call it, is that people that want a political movement, that want to go and face the riot shields, and people that are like, you know what, that's not very prudent. It's like I fall on the intellectual, that's not very prudent side. But then at the same time, I feel that the people that want to go out and do IRL activism, they have a noble goal in mind. It's just that the failures have very severe consequences on a lot of these different people. Now, I choose to use my real name and face because, like, let's face it, I'm like out there and like I don't really have a normie job to be taken away. But I am constantly aware of the fact that as soon as you align yourself in real life with certain groups and with certain events, it's not very good. It's like you'll be deplatformed, your sources of payment will be taken away. Like Trudeau, like the truckers, they literally had their accounts frozen. Like it's
messed up.
The fist of power came down on ostensibly not even a right-wing movement, but like a normie, like vaguely conservatard, like libertarian.
Yeah, right.
Like these people, like despite this, and by the way, listen, I don't care if this gets me into trouble. This is the truth. The guy with the Austrian painter flag, that was a plan. I don't care what anyone says. That was a plan by the government, okay?
The what flag? The what flag?
You know,
No, I don't know.
The mid-century German flag?
Oh, he had that at the...
There was a guy that had it at the truck in Ottawa.
No, I'm sure that was a plan. Totally, yeah.
No, but conveniently, Trudeau's personal photographer, because you know, like every president, every prime minister, and every like head of state, they have their personal photographers, right?
Yeah.
Trudeau's the prime minister's personal photographer just so happened to be right next to the guy with the Austrian painter flag.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, of course it's bad, dude. So many of these things are manufactured. I mean, it's all manufactured. I mean, not it's all manufactured, but they, as I always tell everybody, they don't manufacture. This is their rule. And you can see this everywhere. Their rule is they don't manufacture the event. They they don't make up, they don't burn the Reichstag, right? They don't actually do the thing.
Tiki torch,
They don't actually make it. They inflame it. Like they cut it in a certain way, they disseminate it in a certain way, they put somebody with the flag at the thing, they photograph it in a certain way that is real, you know? They don't go as far. It's not worth the risk for them to completely fake it.
Yeah.
They only capitalize on what's there already. And that's their thing. That's how they do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was great, man. We got to wrap it up here because we're over time. But dude, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Oh man. I'd like to do this again, maybe on my podcast. We could do something.
Yeah, hell yeah, anytime.
I've been starting to read some of your articles and your articles. So you could find me my YouTube, well, the free stuff first. So I'm on YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, and like Odyssey, Jenner Productions. Everything's Jenner Productions except for my Twitter. So Telegram, I do longer blog posts. instead of tweeting on Telegram, giantproductions@telegram.com. My Twitter is always Giant Gio. I'm almost at 30K. So please, I'm almost at 30K. And of course, my Substack and my Patreon. Patreon.com/giantproductions. Gio's Content Corner on Substack. And all of my paywalled and my free versions of content-minded giant reviews, where I break down texts and articles and books. They're now available on Substack. So if you don't want to give money to Patreon for whatever reason, you can pay me on Substack, but you also get the free version that's downloadable and RSS and all that on Substack. So yeah, but Patreon's like, of course, my flagship. And I am working on a direct to sale website, but I just have to put stock on it for all of my artwork. So I do have a new Instagram account. My old Instagram got hacked. I was almost at 2,000 followers, but yeah, so that's all my stuff. I always post updates on like Telegram, the YouTube community tab, and on and on Twitter, of course. So yeah, go and follow me everywhere. I have a link tree. The easiest way is just to like follow my link tree. It has the donor links. I have PayPal for like direct donations and stuff like that. I have Buy Me a Coffee. So yeah, just my link tree. There you go. That's my. I have a Find My Friends as well, but I have to update that one. So
Cool.
Yeah, link tree. There you go.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, Gio. This was great.
Yeah, this is great, man. I love this. This really pulled a lot of different things together.
For sure, man. All right.
Ciao.